Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission is, as always, pretty simple. We take all your scattered sources, you know, the articles you saved, the research notes, all that stuff you meant to get to,
And almost forgot about.
and almost forgot about, exactly. And we turn it all into crisp, actionable knowledge. So today's deep dive actually comes from something I think we've all been through: digital decluttering.
Oh, that painful, necessary cleanup.
Totally. The sources we're looking at today started with someone doing that exact thing sometime near the end of 2025. And while they were cleaning things out, they stumbled on this long-forgotten series of notes all about meditation and mindfulness.
And that led to something specific.
It did. It led them to rediscover and really dig back into the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique.
And that technique is so compelling because it works
Mm.
right away. It's really well known in, say, stress management circles.
Right.
Because it gives you a remarkably quick way to anchor yourself, to pull you out of a thought spiral. It actively engages all five of your senses in this really structured way. It's a very reliable, very fast-acting mental reset.
Exactly. We know it's a powerhouse for anxiety, but the thing is, what we found buried in those notes, it wasn't just more confirmation of its calming effects. It was this entirely unexpected secondary use for it. This grounding exercise, if you do it consistently, offers these amazing benefits that go so far beyond just stress relief. They step right into the realm of creativity.
Interesting.
Yeah, and enhanced observation. So that's our real nugget for today. How focusing your senses doesn't just calm you down, it can actually make you a better writer or artist, or even a better decision maker.
Okay, let's unpack this. So before we get to that big creative payoff, let's just quickly revisit the technique itself. What is the core structure of the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique?
Right, the basics. The basics. The person who wrote these notes even mentioned that the framework is so standard an AI could summarize it perfectly. It's just that simple countdown.
Right. You identify 5 things you can see,
Then 4 things you can feel.
3 things you can hear,
Yeah.
2 things you can smell, and finally 1 thing you can taste. And really, it's fundamentally a sensory override exercise.
A sensory override. I like that.
Yeah, its purpose isn't just passive relaxation. It's designed to force your brain to stop cycling through, all the internal noise, past regrets, future anxieties.
All that stuff.
And instead, it makes you immediately sharpen your awareness of your physical environment right here, right now. You're basically creating a constructive cognitive load that short-circuits those destructive thought patterns.
And by creating that load, you get all the known benefit. I mean, the sources confirm this. It disrupts rumination. It helps you overcome distraction. It dials down rising anxiety.
Yeah.
If you feel that mental spin-up starting, just asking yourself to name 5 things you can see, it forces your attention into this productive cataloging mode.
That's it, exactly. The cognitive load is the engine, but the quality of that observation, that's the key. When your prefrontal cortex is forced to catalog data like the specific texture of your shirt or the faint hum of the AC, it literally shifts resources away from the emotional centers that are running that fight or flight response. The problem is our brains are kind of lazy. They default to generalizations. This technique forces specificity.
But hold on, isn't forcing yourself to observe things also a bit stress-inducing? Especially if you're trying to relax. Did the source material talk about that? The paradox of forcing mindfulness when you're already stressed out?
That is a critical question. And yes, absolutely. The notes deal with this head on. That paradox is very real. The author's initial experience was that, knowing the structure and actually using it consistently were 2 totally different things. And that brings us right to the practical challenges.
Yeah, the initial insight from the source material was really honest about this. The author said they struggled, like, a lot to actually use the technique when they needed it most.
So, in the moment of high stress.
Exactly. They described the attempt as often creating more anxiety, and the reason why is, well, when you're already stressed, the pressure to instantly come up with a perfect list, 5 sights, 4 feelings, 3 sounds, it feels like a test.
A test you're failing.
A test you're failing. It turns this helpful exercise into a performance demand.
Wow, yeah, that is such a crucial barrier for anyone trying to pick up a new habit. If the mechanics feel like a chore, or if you feel like you're failing at it,
The habit dies.
it dies quickly. I think a lot of people can relate to that struggle.
Yeah.
The source described one attempt where they could only feel 2 things: the chair they were sitting on and the stress knot in their shoulder. Right. And that's not a successful grounding exercise.
Yeah.
That's just taking an inventory of your discomfort.
Exactly.
And that friction point is what led to the practical solution. This is the critical nugget, I think, for listeners looking for, an easy win. The source found that the easiest way to keep track and stick with it wasn't about being super strict with the numbers.
Okay, so what was it?
It was giving yourself permission to simply jot down whatever thoughts came up as you moved through the list,
Yeah.
even if you didn't get a full 5 items.
Ah, so the goal shifted. It went from, I must identify 5 unique things to something more like, I'm just going to engage my sense of sight 5 times, whatever comes out.
Exact.
That's a huge transformation. You're prioritizing the act of shifting your awareness over getting a perfect score on a test. You're letting imperfection drive consistency.
It completely transformed the process. It went from this rigid test of memory and observation to a flexible manual check-in. The goal was just engagement, not perfection.
Right.
And that willingness to be flexible, to just acknowledge the first few details that come to mind, that's what allows the real mechanism, which is improving focus on your surroundings,
Right.
to actually take root.
And that deepened focus, that consistent, enhanced sensory focus, that's the foundation for everything else, right?
Yeah, it is.
You can't get to the creative benefits without first getting this part down. So building on that idea, we've covered stress relief, we have covered better daily concentration. Now, let's get to the part where the notes got really, really interesting. What was this unexpected link between a simple sensory exercise and actual tangible creative output?
This is where it all comes together. The person who wrote these notes, they had this realization that the grounding exercise actively helps to prime what they called a photographer's eye.
A photographer's eye. I love that phrasing.
Perfect, isn't it? Think about the skills you need for any kind of descriptive work. Taking a photo, sketching a scene, writing a description. You have to analyze all these little elements that most people just gloss over.
Like how light falls or specific textures.
Exactly. Micro details of composition. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique is basically mandatory, instant training for that exact skill set.
It's like switching your brain's camera from autofocus to manual. You know, we usually just process the world as desk, window, person.
Right, the general labels.
But if you have to name 4 distinct things you can feel, you're forced out of that. You suddenly feel the cool, slick metal of your mouse, the kind of abrasive texture of the paper on your desk, the slight stiffness in the collar of your shirt.
And the constant pressure of the chair cushion.
Yeah, all those details.
That mandatory articulation of detail, that is the skill enhancement. The author mentioned this little test they tried. Before a grounding session, they challenged themselves to write one descriptive paragraph about their workspace. And they said they relied heavily on generalizations. You know, dark wood, loud keyboard, just the basics.
And what about after doing the technique consistently?
The change was dramatic. They found that after a 5-4-3-2-1 session, they could just effortlessly generate descriptive prose. They were pulling sensory words directly from the exercise.
Wow.
They were suddenly able to write a whole paragraph about their desk using like 10 unique sensory adjectives, describing the faint smell of old books and the precise, dull reflection of the monitor in the slightly dusty wood grain.
That's the difference between seeing a desk and truly observing a scene.
It is.
That is a truly fascinating connection. We tend to think of mindfulness as this purely reactive tool, right? Something you use when you're in a crisis. But this is evidence that a short, structured exercise can fundamentally improve the raw material you need for any creative, high-detail work.
And it goes way beyond just writing or painting. For you, the listener, this is actionable knowledge for just professional preparedness. If you use 5-4-3-2-1 before a critical meeting or a big sales pitch, you're not just calming your nerves.
You're doing more.
You're capturing specific, descriptive details about the room, the people, the objects. And those details become sensory anchors you can weave into your pitch. Or they become cues for memory recall later. It adds depth and richness to your interaction, even in a totally non-artistic setting.
It's about overriding your brain's instinct to be efficient.
That's a great way to put it.
That instinct just says, the chair is brown. But the grounding technique forces you to spend that extra millisecond to notice that the chair is, specifically, dark brown leather. It's a bit cracked on the armrest, and it has a faint, clean smell of polish. That level of observation is what makes a pitch or a piece of writing really connect with people.
So if we tie this all together, the core insight is this. By forcing that active sensory engagement, the technique improves the quality of observation you need for any descriptive endeavor.
Right.
It takes you from being a passive consumer of information to an active cataloger. And that flexibility we talked about, permission to just jot things down, that's what makes it sustainable.
What a fantastic journey. I mean, we started with the pain of digital decluttering and these forgotten meditation notes.
And ended up here.
And we ended up discovering this incredibly powerful practical tool for creative and professional enhancement. It's not just about settling your nerves, it's about leveling up your descriptive powers.
And if we expand on that whole photographer's eye insight, it raises a really provocative question for you, the learner.
Okay.
If actively engaging the senses can boost descriptive and recall skills in these specific ways, how much potential knowledge and skill enhancement are we missing out on by not intentionally engaging our senses during, well, during any learning process?
That's a big question. Are we just passively letting information wash over us? Reading a report with blurry focus? Or are we actively smelling the fresh ink on the document, feeling the weight of the book, hearing the ambient sounds around us as we absorb something complex? The lesson seems pretty clear. If you want to remember it, feel it. If you want to master the details, you have to observe them rigorously.
It really prompts us to think about the broader use of sensory awareness in all parts of our lives. Don't just wait until you're anxious to ground yourself. Ground yourself to gain clarity.
So the next time you're sitting down to study or prepping for a high-stakes conversation or even just starting a creative project, maybe give the 5-4-3-2-1 technique a try. Not just to calm down, but specifically to prime that photographer's eye and sharpen your focus. We'll leave you with that thought until the next deep dive.